But I'm excited about today's session. Today is about the art of true representation. We thought it would be important specifically to have a session centered around film marketing and design. You see these lovely posters that we have around the film school. Students, not in here. I like pointed in here. The posters are in here. But if you walk, right, if you walk around the hallway, we have posters from faculty and students. And it's such a fun part where the student gets to make their own posters. But I think what we wanted to do is dive a little bit deeper about film branding, film marketing. Now that you finished your senior project, you finished your short film, how the hell do you even put it out there for people to see it? And how can the design also match the intention of the film? I couldn't think of inviting a better person to come and introduce this topic, so I'm going to read Dante's bio. Dante Nash is a multifaceted creative who's been building, designing, and storytelling for as long as he or his family can remember. He's known as a brand expert with over 5 years in corporate and now turned entrepreneur. His professional journey spans designing TV campaigns, creating product and apparel lines with Milwaukee Titans, and helping businesses and voices across the country tell their stories. Most notably, Dante is an NBA champion. He was on the graphic design team with the NBA, the Bucks, specifically when they won our year. That was a fun time to be his friend, I would say. A lifelong student and a proud uncle of 10, known for his keen eye for detail and his ability to capture the real story and his skill in crafting identity and distinction in a crowded creative world. Dante leads by translating visions into vibrant, lasting experiences that move people and spark inspiration. So I brought Dante because he's also responsible for creating every single poster that I have for my films. But not only because he creates good posters, but it's the process behind the poster making that I think is the true highlight of working alongside with someone in that way. So yeah, he's gonna come give you a little bit of his expertise, and yeah, thank you all for coming to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you. I think one of the main things is I really want to get that intro part right. Like when someone reads the intro, I'm really paying attention to the keywords that I'm like, okay, what might tweak down. But
I'm grateful to be in your practice.
So I'll trade this.
Control me.
Gotcha. You know, no water, no transition. Can I actually get one of you to help me transition, and then I actually have a prize for you.
I'll do it. But you all, these are, go over and do it. He's a Leo, by the way.
It works every time. How you do? So pretty much one of the main things that I want to approach today with is just like have a comfortable, universal conversation. And just as I was saying before, like I do a lot of these engagements with UW-Madison, Mayet, and now here. So I'm excited to come here for the first time. But one of my main things is just hopefully I learn something from you and you take away something from me, where that's spurred through conversation. And just as Keith is saying with like the process part of it, I believe a large part of my creative, and just as I was telling you guys before, comes through the collective of the community. I describe myself as a community creative and a creative community. And so like both of those things in tandem rely on each other. And I, for one, cannot define myself without first speaking to those who I create with. And so with that being said, a lot of this presentation and a lot of the stuff that we'll go through is like going to be conversation pieces where I'm going to encourage you all to, how does that feel? What does this look like? And then also challenging you to reflect on that in your own work. And so while this isn't going to be a strictly technical based lecture in class, this is going to be more of a conceptual based thing where I approach things from I would say an existential standpoint, where it's more concept based. It is at large part how you're approaching something as opposed to like the technicalities of it, where I'm a large believer that anybody can create anything given enough time, right? And so we can talk about the technicalities all day, but that's just going to be to speed up your process, right? But then if we approach it conceptually, we're getting to the heart and the meat of it, which is basically talking about how you feel and how you're represented in it. And especially as film is very archival, that is the true personality or the essence that you were wanting to capture, which is why I call this the true art of representation. He went to the next one. Mr. Mays, thank you. So this is just a reel of my work. So you guys can kind of get a technical example of the things that I do. So I believe if you hit spacebar, it goes to the next. No, because no, but the videos where like I didn't know if I should hit the right arrow or the spacebar. So I'm just.
We also preface we've been best friends for a very long time. So we get a lot of enduring back.
No, absolutely, but that's the best part. So the stats or the story so far. I'm a product, born and raised from the city. I grew up on 55th and Center, which is north side, but technically the west side. Geographically challenged, so when people said that that's the west side, I had a very hard time accepting that. But so I'm born and raised right here in the crib. I started as a traditional artist. I heard a few people say that they like to draw. That's how I started. I started wanting to be a sequential artist. And for those that don't know what that means, it's just I wanted to make comic books. And a large part of my inspiration came from creating something that was essentially larger than life, or kind of detaching away from or the extremes of reality. And so I've identified as a traditional artist or artist since I could pick up a pencil. And when I say I've been a creative since I can remember, that is when the 10,000 hours starts. So a lot of people think about 10,000 hours in regards to when you first step into the professional field. For those who are graduating, like you think then that's your starting point. But for those in a creative alignment or in passion alignment, just in general, which is more of that conceptual based approach to it, a lot of people have started their pursuits way earlier than that degree or that stage comes into play. So that's my main important part about starting as a traditional artist. But then of course we got to add the certifications to it. So I majored in art at UW-Madison with minors in digital studies and business development, and that is where I met everybody's favorite professor, Mr. Mays. And then so right out of college I kind of started to get into this story as well, but I didn't have an offer getting out of college. And then I feel like that starting process was very confusing for me, because as a first generation graduate, 4-year degree graduate, so I had some family members who had dabbled in like technical college and GED programs, but no one had actually tenure at a 4-year university. And so one of my main things was like, just what am I doing? How much is this piece of paper worth? So on and so forth. So I feel like that was one of the biggest like abrasion points for me when I'm figuring out just where I'm going. And so that first bite didn't come until like 4 months out of college. It was a part-time gig, but that was exactly what I needed. And so I started at MPS doing design, and the official title I believe was a marketing specialist. From there I went to design for the Milwaukee Bucks for 4.5, 5 years, where there I was fortunate enough to be with them through the 2021 win, which, you know, they bought me a ring, which was great. And so I currently work as an entrepreneur or a business owner, where that is also ghetto and an abrasion point where I am figuring out a lot of, as a first generation creative or college grad, I'm also a first generation business owner, entrepreneur in the family as well, where a lot of these are vocab building points, where these are all essentially growing pains, or these existential points on me figuring it out. And so of the point of the creative conversations is more or less to help figure out that dialogue, speak to the vocabulary of my findings, and then also to communicate that to you guys where some of those uncomfortable or unknowns can become a little bit more approachable based on the analysis of somebody else's staircase. And so let's go to the next. So this is my XP so far. And so I said I'm a product of the city. I went to the best high school, Rufus King. If you hear anybody, and I know you're not from here, so if you hear anyone say that they're from the best high school in the city, they're 100% talking about Rufus King. They say we walk around with our nose in the air. Part of this a little true, but I would say that's where it really started, where I start to identify a certain level of culture and style as far as my passion goes. That's where I designed my first comic books. That's where I designed or started to win my first art competitions and things like that. So I would say that's where my identifying Charmander moment was. And then I would say when I graduated at UW-Madison, which some of you will be graduating next month, and I reevaluated like these levels this morning with my mentee. So you're only evolving into your chameleon moment next month, right? And that's a weird thing to conceptualize. And for those who don't know what Pokemon is, there's 3 forms of evolution. There's the one you start as, there's the second form, and then there's the final form, where you just grow from there throughout. And so when speaking about just the overall significance or impact of my journey so far, when I'm thinking about the significance or the 100%. How y'all do, Dante?
Nice to meet you, sir.
No, I'm good. I'm glad y'all came. Yes. So thinking about the overall importance of this moment or this time, I'm just reflecting on that in context to how much I've grown since that UW-Madison point or that question. And so from there, NPS was a short blip. I've probably worked there maybe about 1.5 to 2 years, being promoted from part-time to full-time in that span, working for their communications and marketing department, where we were designing and creating campaigns for, I believe there's 170 schools in the NPS district. So that was a very high cadence application where in each of these things, I think the only thing that I wasn't lacking was deadlines. And so I'm building up a lot of experience in speaking to this number here. That's the exact amount of days that we consider from that moment that I picked up that pencil. And so when we talk about that 10,000 hours moment, a lot of this is all just building from that moment that you identify your pursuit. So let's go to the next one. And so in this past year, in this entrepreneurial journey, I've been able to add a lot of work to my arsenal or to my archive. But I think one of the main things that I want to look at here is just the feeling that you guys get when you look at my work. And so from the reel that we saw to the static graphics, one thing that I pride myself on is capturing the true essence or the true personality of someone in a piece, where if I take a photo of someone, I want them to see themselves in the photo. When I design something, I want them to proudly bring up like, oh, like you didn't know that. So for this Run Black and Green logo that I actually did 2 months prior, that square lockup is, I don't know how many of you guys have played the childhood game bubblegum in the dish, but those are 4 feet that are coming together that are creating this start point or this moment, which, you know, from that, you know, kids expend a lot of cardio, but that gave the business owner who I was creating this with and for, like, a lot of pride to then take that design and to take that concept and then run with it. Now she has a story to go along with it that directly resonates with herself. And for that, I try and incorporate that into everything, right? So in all of these pictures and all of these graphics and all of these lockups, one of my main thing is when you look at it, you feel connected to it. You feel like it takes you back to a moment, it takes you back to a feeling, and you can know exactly how you felt in that moment. We can go to the next one. So this is a continuation on that. And so a large part of what I take pride in is keeping it up. And so my design professor, when I was in school, would oftentimes say, what the client puts up isn't what has to go in your portfolio. And so I'm always shooting and always compiling so much stuff to where their favorite photos may not be the ones that they use, but I know the things that I capture are true to essence and are representative of that moment or that brand that I feel, and they may not necessarily always feel it, but that is something that I always want to at least get the option of or incorporate into the process. So having someone look at their photo and go, oh, I see myself in that. I see myself professionally. I see myself in my everyday. And then I also see like there's not only just their personal representation, but their city representation. So this is actually a very proud logo of mine for Mr. Maze. Life is a maze. But we take that city inspiration of the 414 area code and we start to literally incorporate it into the maze, but then we start to expound on that as a bigger picture idea that then allows him to connect with it and give him a story or a deeper meaning piece behind anytime we see that logo or anytime he sends that out to someone without them even asking. It's already represented. So we can go to the next one. Oh, the last part there before I go into the 10 principles and the real reason why we're here. That was just mainly why and who I am. So I would say a large part or a big concept behind what I've begun to understand is marketing makes you do, branding makes you feel. And that's why I emphasize the fact that I'm a brand expert, because I make people feel and I make those ideas come to life and truly represent there. I can also make people do. So I've also mastered the art of marketing. I would say that's what the W2 has taught, right? But it's that nuanced approach to it where the branding is one of the important pieces that make you proud of it and live on further than the marketing does, because marketing is oftentimes timed and dated, where branding lives throughout. And I think there's something so beautiful in that archival part of the process. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah. Yes.
Got you. Before we go into anything, are there any questions or thoughts about what we saw? We can go back to anything as well. Okay, got you. Am I cooking a little bit? Okay. No, absolutely. Okay. So emphasizing or keeping on track with the idea that we're sticking in the true representation or being authentic to ourselves. One of my main challenges when stepping out and the pivot for entrepreneurship was, so I owned my domain for a year, and I don't know how many of you have paid for a website, but that was like, God, I could have had a PS5. I could have spent that money on something else. It was like $300 something. And on this year-long application where I'm like, this isn't even up. It's not even live. And so I had a lot of my work already up and summarized, but one of the problems was I just couldn't figure that out. And so what ended up happening is I ended up coming to what we're about to see now. And that, like, this one media element was the missing piece to add to the site to make me proud enough to share it or feel accurately represented in it, where I felt like without this piece, I was kind of faking the funk a little bit. I was presenting a clean face, a sterile face, but I wasn't presenting my face, which is one of the most important parts of this piece right here. So one of the main things, first of all, who knows what that is? I kind of heard it right there. You played, well, can you tell us what that is?
It's called cans. It's basically like broke basketball. You just gotta get the kid. Hey, I was broke too. No, I heard that before.
I like the was right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm rich right now. Don't play
We up, abundant. Okay.
But cans is like really fun. You basically put 2 cans on lines of the concrete on the sidewalk, and then you have to score it up. You throw the ball. You can hit from the first line 10 points, second line 20 points. Some people be try hard to hit from the 5th line to get 50 points. But you know, I'm a 20-point hitter. I always make
Okay, 20. Okay, got you. And so
Is anybody in the game right now?
you mentioned something important right there. So broke basketball, right?
Yeah.
And so it's what I think is beautiful about it, and the reason why it's called a game of creativity is like we created that out of nothing, right? And it's like soul food, right? Soul food originated from the idea that slaves were given the scraps that the masters didn't want, and we made that into a gourmet meal. And so cans I look at very similarly, where this is something that we're taking a very limited or very poor approach or a resource and making it into something that is genius, like ingenious. And so I feel like incorporating that essence into my website or into my professional website, not just from a Dante Lavell aspect, which is my personal artistry, but from a Create AVRA or an AVRA perspective, which is my business, was very important, because when you see that, not only do you see Milwaukee, but you also see this idea or this thought process of taking something that is so simple or so minuscule and making it into something that is more grand or more designed and more flesh. And I think that was one of the things that when that clicked for me, I was so proud to put out the site. And so that was one of the real reasons that I had waited so long, because I had not had that moment that I felt connected to my own site or my own work. And something as simple as that animation that I created was what spurred that and kind of tied that through line for me. Yep, we get to go to the next one. And so right now, and I guess I should have prefaced with this, but I'm going to give you guys 10 concepts that is going to be working, of course. And so I just think in phrases, and I always take gems. So if one of you guys spit a gem to me, I'll probably write it down and keep it. Keith has given me some gems in my tongue where I just like taking these phrases or these words where they're kind of guiding principles or north stars to kind of follow. And so I've like written down 10 concepts that we're going to go through, and then I'll let you guys have the rest of your weekend back. But the first one in this art of representing ourselves candidly is start with your truth. And so your why shows up before your work does. And so with that being said, you can't help being yourself. And you can't fight that feeling. You can't fake the funk. It will always present itself no matter like who you are. And so with that, it's important to identify it, so when it does show up, you can label it, and you can see it. And so throughout this a game of creativity short that I created, that why really showed up as far as my through line, and that being a community creative and a creative community concept really spurred for me specifically. And so when you lead with who you are, you should lead with who you are, not who you think you should be. And so I feel like a lot of times, so in the social media based world, it is easy to get lost in the art of comparisons and who could, should, would, all of these phrases where it is getting away from the core of it, which is just identifying you. And so once you build trust through that, so build trust through honesty, and people feel the realness instantly. And so with that is me, when I created the game of creativity and pushed that out, regardless of how I felt about it, it was always affirmed through my community when they saw that, because that that breathe the passion or the true representation through the artwork, so they are able to see me in my work and kind of affirm or confirm that feeling for me. And so that's also to say that F is force, it'll break. And so it's important to always take a step back and reset. So that year of me not publishing my site is very vital, because if I had pushed it out further, I would have been disappointed in the work. And some people say just let it go and you can come back to it later. But me, as somebody who focuses primarily on the content or the work, I know that that thought process is important for me to finish, because at the end of the day, it is a hobby and it is a passion of mine. And this is a love where I don't want anything to be misrepresented there. And so that's one of the main things about the take a step back. When you don't force it, it'll break. And so moving on to principle number 2, we're talking about finding your blueprint. Both number 1 and number 2 are thoughts around the overarching concept of inner truth. So these are internal things that you can analyze and or think about that will help you like just identify the why or the who in it. And so when you find your blueprint, this is your DNA. Not your Pinterest board, not your followers, not your likes, not your real page and things like that. These are like your legitimate and actual thoughts. And so this is your chaos. And so your mess holds the magic, so stop hiding it. I feel like a lot of people try and portray a certain level of perfection and or what they feel like they should be doing, and that is the inauthentic piece to it, where you're exhausting more effort and work literally when thinking about these things, where you should be focusing more on the natural side of it. And so when you track your patterns, your habits and instincts reveal your real style. So I'm actually in the process of doing this. You can literally track your patterns. And so me being an entrepreneur now for the 2nd year now, I have year 1 to year 2 metric data that I can actually compare. So this is year over year, me comparing my social media progress. This is me comparing my website progress, my email progress, my student engagement, right? So what are you guys getting from this talk? What are some feedback points, things like that? These are all parts or measurable components that will accompany the qualitative. So there's quantitative and qualitative ways of measuring things. So qualitative is the creative based or the quality based approach to something, where creative oftentimes lie. And I won't say easily, but I have a little bit of confidence there to say I'm generally good qualitatively all the time, right? But it is when you measure the quantitative parts, you start to know your own calendar, and you start to identify your own blueprint to it. So me being able to see what I'm realistically doing, what cadence I actually like to post at, what type of content that I like to include, not only in a presentation, but in a post, in a we can think about a video or a edit. Like all of these things are defining what my foundation is that I can actively go off of and not be caught up or swept in that should, could, and would be doing these things, as in I have a solid foundation or understanding on what I do. And so right to the left we have a good quote from Tupac Shakur, and he goes, a real model just got to be real, and you don't have to play a role. And that's a very important aspect when looking at things, where it's just like you just have to really be yourself first when approaching creative.
You write out on your album, say, I ain't no role model. That's real, that's real. Because a role model got to play a role, and the real model got to be real. I'm a real model. All I got to do every day is wake up and be myself, you know. And I think my thing is I really don't care. I really don't give a F. So that's how I portray myself. And if people look up to that, then it's cool. I never let them down. But if they look up to me thinking, well, he's gonna get a job, he's gonna have his degree, they're gonna get let down, and I'm the wrong model.
Give him a little rhyme, just a little bit. Let him know what's to come.
I keep my mind on my money, money on my mind, finger on the trigger, hand on my nine, smoking blunts of skunk and putting holes in plunks and on the underground funk pumping out of my trunk.
That's enough. That's enough.
You.
So let's sit here. So what do y'all think about this clip?
He real.
You real?
Yeah, Tupac always been real. And it's like people misconstruing him a lot with like a lot of what he says, but I feel like he was real from the beginning, that y'all can't have faith in what y'all think he is. Y'all can only have faith in who he is. And who he is real.
And it showed in like the music, on the work, so. I think sometimes like, I'm like, wow, like how did they make that? How did they get there? And yeah, I think he's being himself.
Being sincere,
Yeah.
right? So when I was cutting this clip, I was debating not including that last part where he's like talking about finger on my nine, puffing blunts, X, Y, and Z, and I feel like that in a professional setting is generally inappropriate, right? Where I'm designing this lecture for a scholastic or academic setting, I shouldn't be including this. But in that same vein, for what I'm talking about in candid representation, it's important to include that because that is Tupac, right? Like I can't show that clip without showing that end part. And that's just as important to keep in there as opposed to me feeling socially obligated or filtered to cut that. And so just as I was talking about with the game of creativity, it is important for that to be on my site because that is equally as important to know who you're engaging with before you sign up and or contact me, right? And anyone who was contacting Tupac knew not only the ethic and the values that he represented, but also knew that second part was coming with it. And so that's why I love that clip so much. So going past that, feel first, format second. And so right now, me and Keese are working on a film called Monikers. And so one of the main things that we're challenged with right now is getting the feeling right first before the structure fully solidifies, right? We can put together a good paper. We can put together a good film. Keese can do that in his sleep. That is a talented filmmaker right there. But one of the main things that is important in our art process is that we need to make someone feel something. And that is a large part of what I feel creative's intention or responsibility is. And so, with that being said, the third principle is design through emotion. And so this is moving away from the inner thoughts and moving to just the more technical aspects of it. So 3 and 4 will actually be the most technical that we'll be getting outside of the conceptual parts of it. So design through emotion, lead with intention. If the confidence is off, it won't connect. And so with that being said, if someone is cutting your hair and they say, oops, or my bad, or they pause, you worry a little bit, right? And you start to think about it yourself to where you're just like, I don't know if he messing me up there. I don't know if she messing me up. And that is something that translates easily into the work. And you can feel those things, you can see those things, whether you like it or not. And so it is very important to lead with intention. And so what this looks like is casting choices. So who you're casting, the fonts you choose in the deliverables afterwards, the fonts you choose in the credits, the fonts that you use throughout on socials. Like I even have a specific font that I use in my emails that is my default font, but it is giving a characterization to, oh, this is a Times New Roman guy, right? And that speaks a bit to my character before we even have a face-to-face in person. And so I know we have a color grader, a color editor interest in the room, but this is emotion is often communicated through those colors and LUTs that you apply. All of these should fit the role in the emotion that you're hoping to portray through your piece. And this isn't just a stylistic choice, because we can always make a choice for something to look cool, right? Like, you add a filter on anything and it probably looks more dramatic, it probably looks better, it probably looks this. But what is the intention behind making something warmer with the sepia filter? What is the intention behind making something cooler? What are you trying to communicate through that? And then let emotion drive the choices. So digital media is an opportunity to archive those feelings. In the example that we're going into right now, one of the main things that I want us to pay attention to is not only is it beautifully shot, but the titling, the casting, and the subject of it is all important to the intent on how we're supposed to feel about this piece.
Salad.
These are, yeah.
Buenos dias. Welcome to the Flamboyant Panaderia. Can I take your order?
Buenas, una tripleta.
Sorry, we are all out of tripletas.
Well, pastrami.
Yeah, we have pastrami.
Okay, pastrami, eggs and cheese.
Criollo bread, Soval bread, Mallorca bread, or sweet medianoche bread.
Criollo bread.
Whole wheat Criollo or normal Criollo?
Normal.
American cheese, right?
No, I prefer Papa cheese.
Papa, like father?
No, not like father. Like Papa cheese.
Hey, I know what he wants. It's okay. Tirámonos de
Thank you. Okay, anything else?
No, that's all. Perdón, no, se me olvidó algo, sorry. I also want a quesito. It's for a friend of mine, my friend Concho.
Okay. Regular quesito, bacon quesito, or guava quesito. We also have vegan quesitos. Let me just check to see if we still have some. Cheeseless quesitos are all gone. We sell them fast, sorry.
I want a traditional quesito.
You mean regular, right?
Yes, regular.
Okay, your total is $30.
Regular. Pues, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, we don't take cash.
I was here a couple of weeks ago and I paid with cash.
We just implemented the new system this last Monday. It's corporate policy to offer our clients a cashless environment. But you can pay with your phone.
Okay. Can I pay you later?
I am sorry, mister, but I cannot prepare your food until the order is paid in full.
But please, I knew the original owner.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I understand.
Tranquilo, don. ¿Seguimos aquí?
Sí, seguimos aquí. Y gracias.
Oh, gracias a usted.
Joven, tu dinero.
Se apure, señor. Chavos son suyos. Son 30 pesos.
Gracias.
You're all set.
there's some longer clips in there that I that might have been jarring, going from like the 45 seconds to the 4-minute clips. But a large part of why I like this clip so much is because of the titling of it. And so just as we're talking about the font choices, and just as we're talking about the LUTs and the technical aspects, the titling is also very important. And so I don't know how many of you know Spanish, but Debí tirar más fotos is I should have taken more photos. And so in context, that is, so that's Bad Bunny's album title. Bad Bunny's entire album is called I Should Have Taken More Photos. And when you hear that from a rock star, famous celebrity perspective, it means one thing. But when you see it in regards to this clip, it has an entirely different life to it. And that it speaks to the intentionality or the different messaging behind what he, one, is feeling on an intrinsic and personal level, but then two, from that archival aspect in regards to just the overall state of culture and change, the evolution of change and gentrification, more specifically in Puerto Rico. He should have taken more photos to preserve the culture that Puerto Rico represented. And so when I look at this clip, the name and the titling of this is more powerful than what is even stated in both the music and the short film itself. And they both play in tandem, but they both are married through the titling, which I believe is a very technical and intentional aspect for it. So when Keith is deciding a film name, so we go The Heartland, we go Black Strings, we go Monikers, which is the current film, it's just like those are all, what does the name say about the work? Is that truly representative as just as important, if not the most important, technical aspect to those things that we name? What did you guys feel about that at all? Let me get one.
Why you?
No, we gonna get one more. How do you feel about it?
So I think that was March, I went to Puerto Rico with come on board in Yauco, Puerto Rico, and I was definitely a concern that they had the gentrification. And just, I guess what I get from it is the generational divide, just like being like older Puerto Ricans and younger Puerto Ricans, and like seeing, you know, how things are changing. But just as far as how it was shot, it was, I don't know, without in, you know, the cashier was, I guess, is the representation of what I guess the villain would be in this situation. But the system is the villain.
Yep.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yep. And then what are your thoughts around just the idea of the titling being a preservation, or media in general being a vessel of preservation and archive in that moment as well? So this, I feel like, is a question-provoking piece, but in film and media, as you guys are all pretty much active participants in and students of, that is one of the most important vessels to me for film and media, where there is a large part of it that is to the we should have, and we should have taken more photos. We should have, you should be telling your stories from the community level. You should be doing something with your work while you're here, whether that be fantasy fiction, documentary, whichever. It's just like, those are important aspects, or this is an important question to provoke a reminder to go, I need to make sure that I'm archiving my moment here and being present in it as well, but using it as a vessel to kind of fossilize or archive that moment. And not to necessarily put anybody on the spot, but that was more or less like, I do agree. The villain is clearly set up to be the villain here in this case, but I'm more or less looking at it as the question, as you were saying before, on like this is a question-provoking piece.
What I think is really interesting as well with Bad Bunny is I'm pretty sure one of his very early music videos took place in like the area that he grew up in, like a really poor area in Puerto Rico, in San Juan, and after the video came out, loads of tourists started going there, and so there was that like friction of like he made this video and this thing like show love for his community, and then it kind of caused issues for that community because all these people were going there taking photos, and it was like a really crowded residential area.
There's always a drawback behind gentrification because you want at base investment and or dollars and or like foundational upgrading to things that have been historically overlooked and or just like need to be redone, right? But in this case, I feel like it's very important to speak to the inevitability of change, but then to also speaks to kind of the art, craft, and creativity as a vessel of preserving that and pushing that as a proponent forward, which is I think like one of the things that I took from it on like it made me think about who and how I'm creating, or what and how I'm creating right now, and kind of pushing more or less for me to like get involved with films like Monica and things like that, where it's like there's a different level of intention going behind it, where it's just like we want to continue to preserve and archive these names, moments, and pieces of culture. So this is continuing our design choices aspect of it, but this one is probably the most literal. So where we start to build the atmosphere around the film. So just as we were talking about in the on-screen and or some of the post aspects like titling, color, music, we're going to start to literally speak about or get into the poster magic. And so we're making the design choice to build the atmosphere. That is principle number 4. And so you're supposed to make people feel like they're stepping into your world with you, with your creative, with your poster, with your posts, like these things. Every aspect in the perfect brand is communicating the emotion or the thing that we are really trying to hammer home here. So when we think about environments, you're creating space, not just something pretty. So when I am designing a world, when I'm designing a website, when I'm designing a brand, what I am hoping to do is to create a world that can expand and grow from that point. And so everything else, I feel like we're then analyzing or psychoanalyzing to a degree of, does this belong here? So we're psychoanalyzing it to go, does this belong here? And so this is communicated through temperature. Is this a warm world? Is this a cold world? Is it sharp? Is it soft? A lot of these things also relate back to our other technical aspects that we were talking about. But when you pick a feeling, you build on it. And that is one of the most important aspects of choosing that emotion and then building off of those to create a expansive and solid brand. And so the texture matters, but don't try and get caught up into this idea of being perfect with your creations, because a lot of times that grit, that grain, that dust are things that contribute to that emotion. And so who's seen the movie on the left? Got you. So I'm going to talk mess about the one specifically on the left. How do we feel about, for those who watched it, how do we feel like how accurate these posters are to the films, respectively, for part 1 and part 2?
I think probably very accurately, considering like I'm not sure if I can go into spoilers. Is everybody cool with spoilers?
This is a film inspired Star Wars.
I don't like Star Wars.
But that's okay. So you got the go ahead, spoil a little bit.
So basically, the poster, the first one I see on the left side,
The blue kind of reminds me of like Paul Atreides' homeworld, which is basically filled with water, and you know he's heading into like the desert, which is basically that has no water. It's like basically like he has to like dangerous, very place. And even the film, the poster itself says "It begins," which is basically like the start. You know, he's basically entering the world in a place that he's not very comfortable with. He faring themselves in regards to like there's like a lot of dangerous people. You know, there's a lot of people that they can't trust. And something interesting is like you get to see, I forgot the one dude's name, the Glazer guy, the one in the little tunic or tarp. He's like also one of the like probably threats in the film. You could say potentially one of the threats. And the second film, like this poster, is kind of like giving off like just like a raw sort of energy, because it's basically like a war film. Because the Atreides are like fighting with the Fremen, which is essentially a fight for the planet and like the whole entire like galaxy, because you know spice is very valuable. And we get like a shot of the sandworm, which is very important in Hall's like next step to becoming essentially basically this super like crazy overpowered like being. Yeah,
I love that. I just learned something from you. So that's what I really mean by that omniversal aspect of it, because I didn't even connect to the Atreides homeworld before they got there. But I hate this poster on the left. This is completely like Dune is the hottest place in the universe. It is terrible there. He said there's no water there. Why is this poster blue? Why is it cool? This is communicating a ton of things that you are not going to get from this film. And so with that being the case, I feel like in part two does a way more accurate and like very similar job. It's almost like, let's just get it right this time. And so with that being the case, the color choice, the inclusion, here are all hammering home those different hot, warlike, rampant, chaotic elements that the film actually represents, as opposed to feeling like we need to be cool, we need to be sleek, we need to be modern. This is giving me much more Star Wars approach as opposed to the actual wartime that the film represents. And so we're talking about the homie Stilgar there, but Stilgar is one of the main villains, but that's false flag, where that he's their biggest ally, right? The Fremen are their biggest ally. The Harkonnen are who they're generally who the universe or who the galaxy is actually going against. So we are seeing the villains who were present in the first movie for the first time in the second poster. And so this is a story of war, this is a story of something, but the first poster related a lot to the approach that I feel like was essentially a missed opportunity in part one that was corrected in part two, which is one of the main reasons why I love both the translation on film, but also through the poster design that was a lot more accurate and a lot more representative of what the story actually is. And so while part one was a slow build, and I do agree with you that it does connect to the Atreides homeworld, it misrepresents or misleads you in regards to what the actual meat or essence of the emotion is that you're then building off of, because we should have always started here. And so that is one of the main things or main reasons why I say it is important to build the atmosphere around your creative, and then, or pick the emotion and then build the atmosphere around that. You're building out of this world. Those two things aren't different. These are two different worlds.
We had a comment in the back. Did you still want to go?
Oh no, I guess from me at least, the way I should have be there, or I think one of the biggest complaints I remember happening, and like the first movie came out, was like, oh, like this is so slow, or this is so boring, and oh, this is just a bunch of people who are just like talking and like nothing happens and yada yada yada. And I feel like almost what you mentioned before, like sort of like having sort of like a very slow build up. Like I feel like
if the first poster were to look similar to the second poster in terms of bright colors and action, I feel like people would be a lot more misled when then you have like a lot of these very like philosophical and political sort of like conversations and everything. And I mean, there are elements of the first poster that are misleading. Zendaya's in the film for less than 5 minutes and she's being held up like she's part of the president. Whereas in the second poster, she's basically like the co-lead and such. And I do agree that probably the main antagonist probably could fit the place where she's at and such. Like, I don't know. I guess color-wise to me, it's sort of, it makes sense, I guess. Like, especially if you have pieces of media that are put in two parks, there's usually a very large distinction between the two of them. Like, the first and the second half in Wicked. I guess for just as like an example and such. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I was gonna call on you next, but and I'm glad so many people have seen Dune. None of my friends will, but so I'm glad that it sparked the debate. But so my main point here though is that your brand has one color scheme, right? And so with that, these are the same book. These are literally the same book. This is the same plot line. This is the same story arc. If you need to break all of your foundational aspects or color schemes and choices in order to convey that emotion, I think you need to rethink that process, because you can communicate that solitude, that calmness in a different color scheme. That's a task that was just avoided and was just chosen to, let's just break it all up. And so while it's very important to like identify with maybe the mood then for it, you're thinking about this in a holistic sense of this is something that will play out over a course of time. This is a several books to this, that what is that through line or what is that connecting piece. And while it is good to be distinct or distinguished, you can do that while using a system, which is that core emotion and that color scheme and those font choices and those LUTs that we're identifying, that really bring it all together as a family. And that's very important as a brand piece, so people aren't jarred when presenting poster 1 to poster 2.
So the reason why you don't like the first poster is because of the colors. You feel like they're misleading to the plot, or am I confused?
Not only are they misleading for me, but these are communicating two entirely different stories, and they're the same.
I disagree. I actually disagree with that, because I've never seen these movies, so I'm just looking at them like for face value as they are. And I feel like what my friend AB said about representing his home life, because now I'm seeing him in the corner of the ocean. It looks like he's like treading across the water for real as the main character. And I don't know who's sitting in the back.
Which one?
I didn't know that was I didn't know that was in there.
That's saying.
I didn't know that was in there right there. But I feel like they're not as jarring if you like push them together, if that makes sense. Like the first book is clearly supposed to be New Beginnings, and Blue to me.
This is the same book.
Oh, this is the same book?
This is the same book.
Never mind, forget what I said. Like this front and back, what?
Yeah, and it's like, it's all once, like, you can't appreciate the build up. And so one of my main things here is like, just as the first movie was the war conversations and that anticipation and that thriller aspect of it, the second part is the literal play out of the action. And so with that being said, it was still hot. It was still like very hot in that first part, in that first film, right? And without getting too deep into spoilers, because I feel like who didn't see it is gonna go see it now. But with that being said, I feel as if with that being the case, it's important to have a continuity line, so you're not jarring your viewer when approaching something. And so that is just to create a consistent piece throughout, as opposed to creating something new every time. And that's exhausting. So we can go on to the next one, but okay, that's great. Oh my God, thank you. So moving past picking the emotion and building off of that atmosphere, building the world out of that, we're going into principle number 5, where identify over explaining. And so you're not writing a manual, you're building a memory. Trust your gut. People feel before they think. Aim for a reaction, not comprehension. Confusion, a lot of times, is good. And if you explain too much, you kill the magic. Let them find it themselves. Everybody is going to have a different interpretation or a meaning behind it, which just adds on to your vocabulary of what you can then say your art means. There is so many times where I am explaining something to someone and I have my own approach or understanding of it. So maybe this was just something that I had to do and there was no thought that went into that at all. But one of you may come up and say, oh, this just reminds me of, and that is giving it an entirely different meaning and a different vocabulary to it that still add on to what the piece actually is, because it's not just one thing. And so I feel like when you tell someone it is one thing, you're limiting it. And so there's a multitude of interpretation that can be said there, where you can then still craft your through line based on everybody's different interpretations of that, and that's what you call the truth. So what is the truth or the through line between these different interpretations that your confusion caused? And so with that being said, one of the you guys aren't seeing some of the design right now, but one of the designs that sparked a lot of controversy during my time at the Bucks was this Pushin' P or Pushin' Bobby Portis, Pushin' Portis wallpaper that we put up. And a lot of people at my job didn't understand what Pushin' P was, or they looked at it as a gang-related term or a something that shouldn't be going up on their platform, where it not only caused confusion, but it caused doubt. It caused a certain level of things where when it went out, it was well received by the public. I'm talking about, like, we had maybe about 10,000 downloads on this one wallpaper alone, where a lot of people were admin, give this man a raise, X, Y, and Z, where it's just like through the lack of feeling the need to identify or explain and allowing that to just resonate, knowing the culture in the city and the people, right? And as far as my through line goes and my connection with my home, that really read or resonated through the design piece, where it's just like, it is not in seat. Like, sometimes you just need to trust the through line process of it and allow for that to resonate through. And so Pushin' P was a trend or a popular piece or component that was like a fad, I would say, like maybe a couple years ago, and that was an important piece of identifying with us all being young here, and us all having a connection to the stream. It is important to identify the moments that you can hop in and then hop out. And so this was one of those moments where it was just like, this is the perfect time to run with something like this, and the results speak for itself, and it's always affirmed through that moment or through that reading of it. And sometimes you may read it wrong, you may need to get out of the current, but that is one of the moments. And so I believe we have another clip coming up. And so this is a specific example of identifying over explaining that this might be my favorite piece of advertisement in the past 3 or 4 years.
I was gonna sleep in late, but then I got high. I was gonna let that heal, but then I got high. I just wanted to walk the dog, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, but then I got high, but then I got high, but then I got high. I was gonna put the sky to sleep, but then I got high. I was gonna text my ex, but then I got high. I was gonna drive to work, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, but then I got high, but then I got high, but then I got high. because I got high, because I got high.
That's great. How do we feel about that?
That was good.
Genius. There we go. What do you feel like is genius about that?
The contrast. It's like obviously there's contrast between being high and being high, you know. But then there's that continuity that you talked about. So it's like there's a kind of dialectic where it's like there are two opposite things, but they're not actually opposite. They're one and the same, and that's what makes it clever. And that's why I guess I use the term genius, because it's like, who thinks of that?
Absolutely. Who approved that?
Right. That's a good question.
Go ahead.
It promotes running as well as the PUMA shoes. I know, like, one thing that makes me think about, like, getting into running is when I hear, like, people talk about it and, like, probably get, like, a runner's high or, like, it's like something they just do and they're not thinking about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for PUMA that more and more people around, with more people buy the shoe.
Mm-hmm. That's a wildly popular song too. Good.
I agree. I feel like it adds to it because you're using the song how it's originally meant to be used, but you're giving it a new meaning, which adds to like the ad. I feel. I like that. I felt like whoever said it was genius was right. I was with liking it. I was like, oh, I know this song. And I wasn't sure what the ad was at first. And then it started to click in once I started seeing more people run, have enjoyment on their faces, stress. And even though the lyrics matched up, but they didn't match up. Does that make sense?
They don't match up based on the filter that you feel like you should be looking at this through, right? But then in that regard, it's the same thing. Like it's expanding that world, right? And so when we talk about expanding that, it is just like there are multiple different meanings to this high, right? And when you literally speak of both the cannabis related high, but also runner's high, like you could think about serotonin, you could think about all different types of just different levels of elevation or that euphoric feeling that you get when you achieve something. It is expanding the idea or the concept, or it's challenging, bringing up that word again, it is allowing you to challenge or question what is commonly misconcepted or pigeonholed into one meaning, right? And so that's why I thoroughly enjoy this, because it starts to build on that world, and it is unapologetically identifying as opposed to feeling the need to explain it, right? Because we get it. So let's go to the next. Okay, so similarly to 5, we have connection over perfection still. So this is still going through with that world building piece and being accurate representations of it. So principle number 6 is match the scale. So sometimes less is more, and sometimes more is more, right? So I feel like in a very modern approach to design, it is easy to say, I want to simplify. I want to make this smaller. I want to have as much white space as possible. I want to leave 2 of my thirds open. But what does it look like to have a full frame? What does it look like to touch every edge or every canvas of the poster? And if that world or that feeling and that brand like identifies with it, the poster and or deliverables and or shot selection type should also mirror that concept of feeling alone, of a feeling too close, or feeling full, or feeling busy. All of these things should be reflected into those technical aspects that you're then building on. And so design should reflect the true size, energy, and chaos of the story, not shrink it to fit a minimalist trend. And so this is then getting back to that idea of you are your own thoughts, not your Pinterest boards, unless they overlap. And so simplifying too much can erase key parts of narrative. Know when the story needs to spill out and or condense. So larger, fuller compositions can create the right emotional density when the story demands it. Big stories deserve a big design. And so this is specifically talking about one of my favorite films of all time, Cheaper by the Dozen. How many of us have seen Cheaper by the Dozen? Got you. Have we collectively or no? Okay, so in Cheaper by the Dozen, this is a very chaotic family. I believe they have about 12 or 13 kids, and it's very Malcolm in the Middle-esque in regards to they have their own version of chaos that just works. And so there's a scene and a moment in the film where they try and play perfect. And so to the left, this film poster on the left gives me trying to play perfect. This is a very clean design. It's very linear. It's very straightforward. This is a movie about a father and his family, right? But it is so much more than that. And so when we talk about match the scale, the poster on the left to me fails to portray what the film is actually about. So when we get to the right, you're literally touching almost every part of the frame. There's zero empty space here, just like it is in their house, right? And instead of trying to play perfect, it is just accurately represented through everybody just hop in the frame. And I guarantee you that nobody was staged or styled for their pose here. They all just popped in like that. This is probably a BTS shot of them being on set one day, and that actually represented the emotion more than what the cleanly designed. I guarantee you this took so much time to Photoshop and constrict all of these to their mats in that photo, as opposed to just allowing it to speak for itself. And so for a lot of modern design trends, I feel like it is easy to say less is more, but you need to ask yourself when approaching your design or approaching your creative on how am I following a trend, or am I accurately speaking to the mood or the theme of my piece? So if it is a busier piece, making sure that you're including busy things in the frame, you're making it chaotic, you're making it not so clean, which would then confuse and or jar the viewer, as opposed to what you should be feeling in that moment, especially if you're trying to build a world or that through line. So in alignment with the philosophy number 6, we're moving on to principle number 7, but respect the context and the mystery. So this is very similar to the foundation aspect and what we decided on earlier, but respect the context of what the story is and who you are. So no story exists in a vacuum. Honor where it comes from. Know the soil before you plant, and know the current before you swim. Where the story grows from matters. Remixing without purpose weakens the work. Know when the original spirit already says everything it needs to. If you ignore the roots, the work falls flat. The foundation should be present in the design. And so one of the consistent things that is brought up here is know the current. We talked about it before, but Dapper Dan specifically says the river is always there, but the current is always changing, and the current is always changing. Sorry about the typo there. But so for Dapper Dan, they used to go swimming in the Harlem River, but before they would jump in, they would throw a popsicle stick in to see how heavy or which way the current was going. And so he likens that a lot to his creative process, where he goes, if that current is too strong, or if I know that would then take me away, it's not time for me to jump in that. But then it is also important to identify the direction, yes, but it is also important to know when you can get out versus get in, and that is in large part how creativity works. And so with that being the case, we have a few authentic or respecting the context designs for me that we had approached it from a multitude of different perspectives. However, when we landed on our the 2 examples here, we just automatically knew that this was representative and accurate to what we needed it to be. So for example, in the lower illustration or animation here, this is a lo-fi playlist mix animation that my business created, but it's centered out of Milwaukee. And so in regard to respecting the context, we start to include just literal things that you're seeing on the bus. So it is those graffiti elements, those group elements. So Twang Entertainment is a local Milwaukee group that I grew up with seeing. So to omit them from the piece or the environment that we're setting up would be amiss, not specifically for Twang, but in general to the whole idea that when you're on the bus, it isn't this pristine and clean thing. Like we're adding all of these different elements that give literalness to what we are seeing. And so in Black Strings, one of the most literal things here is like when you look at it at base, the violin is white, but the strings are black. And it was very important when we're going into the design to keep the strings literally black. And so we could have gone for a much more realistic depiction of the violin itself. However, this is one of the earliest concepts that we actually created that just told the literal story of what it is. And sometimes designs can happen in 5 minutes, sometimes it can happen in 5 months. And this concept, we just kept getting drawn back to it, where it's just like, that is the story. And so here in both of these examples, it was a much more literal case where we're portraying literally what we're attempting to go into. So I know you guys are missing some of the design details, but Black Strings is a strings group or strings quartet that plays or that acts as a first respondent group to use music as a medium when approaching a police scene and or a first respondent call where they're attempting to heal through music. And so a lot of the elements that you're seeing down from the color choice of that blue and red, but also the caution tape, and then also the literal broken strings element is trying to heal a broken environment through that music. And so through each of these like illustrative and or non-realistic examples, we have very realistic approaches to design that kind of roots or anchors everything through the context that it belongs in. And so similarly to principle 8, we have respect for context and mystery. And so here we have don't chase clarity. So the mystery makes it personal. Leaves something unanswered. Curiosity drives deeper connection than answers. So this is similarly relating to that confusion aspect or piece where you're hoping to prompt that question aspect or element where you're delving deeper, leaving something open to the viewer to interpret or add to the world that you're trying to create. And so symbols don't have to scream. A whisper a lot of times hit harder than shouts. And then stop trying to fit into a box. Create from what feels natural over what you're supposed to do. So sometimes that's literally natural, or that's literal examples of how we just examined before on the direct translation from what the film is supposed to be about verbatim versus what verbatim is represented on a city bus when you get on there. But for here, I found myself on the left trying to be more conceptual or true to what a horror film is supposed to be. So Black Silk is a film that I was working on marketing and branding for. And in one of the original concepts or proofs that we ended up hashing out, the story was very, very early there. They're trying to meet the overall benchmarks of what a thriller or it's a slice of life thriller, horror, coming of age. There are multiple genres that speak to the film, but from my design perspective, I'm also trying to meet those benchmarks as far as the ominousness. I don't know if that's a word, but we are creating it. But the horror aspect of it, and trying to communicate that through what I feel like is classically portrayed in the film's genre. And then we have the right, which is the final version of the poster, which communicates a lot more of that coming of age aspect, that confusion or that internal struggle or that generational concept here that speaks to the overall message or the through line while still communicating the power that exists in the main figure. The kind of inappropriateness. So the middle frame is a father literally blowing smoke, and it's like not directly in his face, but a lot of people would have a problem with the idea that smoke is present in the face of the child. So there are multiple things here that we're starting to just see kind of naturally happen that I was fortunate with in the poster on the left that started to kind of more naturally come through, just not chasing it through the poster on the right. And I feel like that concept was very important for me to distinguish between both principle number 7 and principle number 8. And so continuing on, we have principle number 9, which is getting into creative listening and growth. So this is kind of going forward and kind of advancing past like the next steps on maybe what the film kind of lands at, but these are taking it past that and moving forward outside of that, and so moving the world forward and creating sequels essentially. So listen to the work. Sometimes you're not the boss, you're the translator. Let the project tell you who it wants to be. Don't force a vibe. It doesn't carry. So kill your first idea if the second one sings. Loyalty is to the truth, not your ego. Every project evolves, and every project evolves if you stop listening. So a lot of these things are naturals. And so one of the main things about the Heartland project, which is this project over on the left that I had the privilege of doing the marketing, branding, and design for. But one of the main things here is we got one photo and it told the story for the rest of all of the marketing and communicated that very naturally. And so we got one photo that started to carry out the rest of everything that we needed it to do. So we allowed it to be just that. We allowed it to run. And sometimes when you guys have a good idea, sometimes you need to just you or a colleague or a teammate or a crewmate have a good idea. You need to just let them run with it and just kind of assist and or aid based on that. So with that, we allowed this photo to run with it. The photo specifically in the poster on the left. So this is a subject of the film, Redea Ellis, local legend. And so one of the main things about the Heartland is that this is a coming of age storytelling archival piece that is telling about the trials and tribulations of what it's like growing up, specifically in the cultures and communities that Keese and I grew up on, primarily the north side, some south side and or different places, but people who have related to certain aspects or elements of the struggle. So when we saw this picture, it identified and or kind of championed the overall message that we just sought to grow off of from there. So with that being the case, the font choice, how it's stylized, the framing of it, everything kind of resonates and or connects back to that Midwest feeling, that that culture and community, that home vibe, that Cream City brick feel, and down to the colors that we started to portray on it. So we got burlap blue mixed into it. We got the Cream City brick, cream kind of being the off-white base of it. What was our green now?
No idea.
Well, so, but it is all intentional things that kind of stemmed off of just being able to run with that one photo and everything kind of naturally falling through there. And all of those things are then second or reiterated through model choices, casting choices, the merchandise design follow-up to it. Like a lot of these things were able to kind of just run naturally from it that may not exist for every project, but it existed for this project. And if and when that does show up, it is important to respect that. And so now we have principle 10. This is the last principle, but stay in a state of learning. A lot of you know these already, but it's always good to reiterate it. Good reps, bad reps, everything teaches. So everything should be an omniversal learning experience. Everything that is done should have a purpose or intent of growing your skill, whether that be technically, whether that be through a storytelling wise or aspect, or identifying some things that you should maybe stay away from. And so acknowledge your influences. We all carry them. Let them inspire you, not limit you. So that's getting back to the Pinterest or social media comparison aspect. But still, one of the most important things is like, there's nothing new under the sun. You're going to have an idea that is like someone else. And so it is important to acknowledge those influences and respect them, and also state them, which may allow ownership and or appreciation for that to come at different points. And so integrate pieces of you into everything, your experiences, your quirks, and your thoughts. Make your work unique and make your work you. So building a personal creative vocabulary is an opening process or ongoing process. Always learn, evolve, and incorporate what resonates to you. And that is overall like just a constant building process of how I even started the conversation with you all on me figuring out what my vocabulary is through engagements like this, through works like working on films, through works like working on posters and or other static graphics. A lot of this is just to build a better vocabulary on what it is I exactly want to do, and determining who and how I am authentically.